Hello viewers, 4DIYers here with another video for everyone. In this video here I'll be showing you how to replace the front calipers and flex lines on a 3rd generation Dodge Ram. This particular model is a 2006 1500 4-wheel drive with the 5.7 liter Hemi. In this situation, both of my front calipers seized and damaged the brake pads. So you'll get to see the aftermath of what happens when your calipers do seize. Calipers may need to be replaced if they are leaking, a piston or pistons are seized, or the piston is damaged. First is elevating the front of the truck, then continue to remove the lug nuts. These require a 22mm socket. Don't forget to place a jack stand under the truck as a safety. As you can see in the background, I'm using my 3.5-ton jack from OEM Tools, model number 24837. Has a minimum height of 3 3/4 of an inch and a maximum height of 20.5 inches. This makes a great addition to anyone's shop. A link to this will be included in the video description to Mobile Distributor Supply. Crack the cap on the master cylinder reservoir to relieve any pressure. Next is using large interlocking pliers to try to compress the pistons. These are 2-piston calipers, so one may be seized or both may be seized. Creating a little extra movement will help with the disassembly. Remove the two 13mm bolts holding on the caliper. If the caliper is stuck into place, you'll potentially need to use a pry tool with the assistance of a hammer to remove the caliper. Once removed, then place the caliper off to the side. With this caliper, it did damage the brake pads and there is a very high risk that it also warped the rotor, so it's best to replace everything in one shot. I do have a full in-depth video for replacing the brake pads and rotors, however I will go over the replacement briefly here. Now using a pry tool, remove the old pads. As you can see, there's basically no material left on this brake pad. Next is removing that brake caliper carrier. This is needed to replace the rotor. This is held on with two 21mm bolts. Remove and place off to the side. My new calipers actually came with new carriers, so I'll no longer need these ones. In order to remove the rotor, it may be rusted in place, so a ball peen hammer can be used to hit in between the studs, and this will eventually break it free. You will have some brake fluid dripping, so have a drain pan handy. Now you can remove the flex line from the caliper, or remove the flex line from the hard lines. I'm replacing the flex lines. They're not overly expensive and it's cheap insurance. Using a 12mm line wrench, loosen the brake line. If yours is already a little rusty and you are worried about breaking them, I would highly recommend applying penetrating oil the night before. Once broken loose, it's a good idea to work the nut back and forth, tightening and loosening to help break any debris free. We don't want the line twisting here. Once free, then remove the 13mm bolt holding on the flex line in place. Finally finish up removing that brake line nut. Ensure the hard line is clean and then install the new flex line. Start the hard line into place and then install that 13mm bolt to hold the flex line. Finally tighten the brake line nut. This line will drip brake fluid, so it's a good idea to leave it elevated to help prevent that. Use a wire brush to clean up the hub surface where the rotor sits on. This will reduce any chance of runout. The rotor has already been cleaned of any packaging oil. The new caliper came pre-installed on the carrier bracket, so that does need to be disassembled. I cleaned up the old caliper carrier bolts with a wire brush and then applied some medium grade thread locker. Install the caliper carrier and then tighten those bolts. The torque specifications for those carrier bolts is 130 foot-pounds or 176 Newton meters. I did check the slide pins just to be sure they are well lubricated. If yours are not, then apply some brake specific grease to these. I applied some brake grease to the spots where the ears of the pads will sit. Make sure you don't get any grease on the rotor face. The anti-rattle clips are then installed on each of the brake pads and then they're put into place. Finally install the caliper. And then install the caliper bolts. I also applied some medium grade thread locker to these. The torque specifications for these bolts is 24 foot-pounds or 32 Newton meters. If you do find the slide pins are spinning, they do have a spot for a 17mm wrench to hold them in place. Now install the flex line into the caliper. The one caliper came with a brand new banjo bolt, however, my other did not for some reason. New crush washers should be supplied. If not, these are a one-time use, so new replacements will be needed. Install a crush washer onto the banjo bolt, insert the bolt into the fitting on the brake line, and then install another crush washer. Finally install that bolt into place. The torque specification for the banjo bolt is 250 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, or 28 Newton meters. Finally is bleeding the brakes. For this I required an 11mm wrench and I used a vacuum pump. Make sure there is fluid in the reservoir before we start. I would recommend having it at the maximum fill line and leave the cap off. Make sure you're able to loosen the bleeder screw and then connect the hose to it from the vacuum line. Typically I like to keep the vacuum pump above 25 Hg when bleeding. I do have a full in-depth video, so be sure to check that out for more information. As a rough overview, pump up the vacuum pump to a minimum of 25 Hg, crack the bleeder screw, and then continue to pump the vacuum bleeder. Make sure the fluid is continuously coming out. Don't allow the vacuum to go to zero, otherwise we do risk introducing air into the system. While there is still vacuum, then tighten the bleeder screw. You will notice bubbling at the line. This is air coming from the system. Bubbles can also come from air leaking around the hose or bleeder screw. I drew out about 80 milliliters of brake fluid here. This ensures that any potential air in the lines has been removed. Always keep an eye on the master cylinder so it's not dropping below the minimum line. Add fluid as needed. Once done, tighten up the bleeder screw and then reinstall the dust cap. Pump the brakes and check for any leaks. Once no leaks are found, then you can reinstall the wheel. Clean the hub face with a wire brush and then put the wheel back into place. The torque specifications for the lug nuts is 135 foot-pounds or 183 Newton meters. Now moving on to the other side for additional angles. First is elevating the front of the truck and then remove the wheel. Make sure you place the jack stand under the truck as a safety. Try to compress the caliper pistons if possible, then remove the two 13mm bolts holding on the caliper to the carrier. Use a pry tool or a hammer to remove the caliper. Once off, set it off to the side. As you can see, the pads on this side have no material left. Use a pry tool to remove the other pad. Now remove the two 21mm bolts holding on the caliper carrier. Remove the carrier. As mentioned earlier, the new calipers come with new carriers. Now is removing the rotor. Again, use a ball peen hammer, hit in between those wheel studs if it's rusted into place. I'm not keeping the rotor, so I can hit the braking surface as well. This one was quite stubborn to remove. Next is cleaning the hub face for the new rotor. Remove any rust or debris which may cause runout. Install the new rotor. Again, this rotor was cleaned to remove any packaging oil. This is important as it can cause contaminations and problems with braking. Next is installing the new caliper carrier. Threadlocker was applied to the bolts and the torque specifications for the 21mm bolts is 130 foot-pounds or 176 Newton meters. Apply grease to where the ears of the brake pads will sit in the carrier. This requires a brake-specific grease. Now install the anti-rattle clips onto the brake pads and finally install the brake pads. Make sure they are fully seated into place. Finally install the new brake caliper. Also make sure that the pistons are fully compressed so you're able to install them correctly. Install those 13mm bolts and the torque specifications for these bolts is 24 foot-pounds or 32 Newton meters. Again, medium grade thread locker was applied here. Using a 13mm, make sure you're able to loosen that retaining bolt for the rubber flex line. On this side I did need to use some penetrating oil. Now is using a 12mm line wrench, loosen that nut on the brake line. Again, be extremely careful with this. This one was giving me a little bit of problem, so I had to take my time so I didn't damage the brake line. Have a drain pan handy to catch any fluid that drips. Finally, remove the flex line. Make sure the fitting is clean and then install the new rubber flex line. Thread it onto the hard line first and then finish up with that 13mm retaining bolt. Remove the rubber protective cap on the new caliper. Install the new crush washer onto the banjo bolt, insert the banjo bolt into the fitting, install another crush washer, and then finally thread it into the caliper. This caliper did not come with a new banjo bolt, so I was required to use the old one. Make sure the old ones are in good shape before reusing them. With the new flex lines, I found the cheapest option was ones that had the ABS clips. I only needed the ABS clip on the one side, however, there is no difference with the lines otherwise. Make sure they are the same length and use the same fittings. Finally, the torque specifications for the banjo bolt is 250 inch-pounds or 28 Newton-meters. Finally, bleed the brakes using the vacuum pump. There's also different ways to bleed the brakes. You can have someone help you, use a pressure bleeder, or have a bottle full of brake fluid attached to the caliper while pumping the brakes. Once done, make sure the brake reservoir is full and reinstall the cap. Also, don't forget to check the brake pedal feel. Clean the rear of the wheel with a wire brush to remove any debris and then reinstall. The torque specifications for the lug nuts is 135 foot-pounds or 183 Newton-meters. New videos released every week on my channel. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It's a huge help to me. Leave a comment below if you found this tutorial helpful. If you're not a subscriber, be sure to also hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching.